who used to be the principal library clerk at the library. And she said, I knew Sylvia at several of our locations. And she was a lifelong learner and always kept up on the latest subject matter. So I was thinking about her a little bit today because I did a personal Facebook post about her, and I knew I was thinking of something, and I was thinking of this song that says, and if you should survive to 105, look at all you'll derive out of being alive. And here is the best part. You have a head start if you are among the very young at heart. And that was Sylvia. So we wish her and her family well. It'll take kind of a miracle to replace or to get a patron like Sylvia. But anyway, over to you, Kathy.
Okay, well, the next thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes from November 18th, 2021. And I need to recuse from that since I was not present. And I know, I think there was someone else who also was not present at that meeting.
It was Narnia.
Okay, and so with those two abstentions, you can, if you approve of these minutes, you can signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
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 Okay, we have the minutes passed from November 18th. And then we have the approval of minutes from the special meeting of November 30th, 2021. And I believe everyone was present at that meeting. So if you approve of those minutes, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
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 Kathy, this is Jenna. Don't we need a motion and a second first before we vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I completely forgot. I don't know what I was thinking. So was there a motion to approve the minutes from November 18th, 2021?
Yes, Barbara.
Barbara, a second?
Yes, Phil.
Bill, okay. And we'll, with the two abstentions, I guess we'll re-vote on those minutes because we didn't have a motion. So I'll signify by saying aye.
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 And is there a motion to approve the minutes from November 30th, 2021?
So moved.
Yes.
I'll second.
Barbara? And who is second?
Peter.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and please, if you approve of those minutes, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Sorry about that, Jenna. I'm still, getting into this role here. So public input session. Is there any public input?
Good evening, everyone. At this time, I have not received any public input.
Okay, then we'll move on to the construction update with Megan.
Good evening, folks. Sorry, I was multitasking, cutting out a Christmas tree. Let me share my screen. I have a brief update for everyone. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Just it popped up something funny about sharing my whiteboard, so I wanted to double check. So as we've been saying for the past few months, the contractors are completing their work. I am happy to report that 3 of the contracts are completely done with their work and have submitted their closeout paperwork. So we're processing their final payments and just making sure every I is dotted and T is crossed on the closeout paperwork. And the other 2 are following quickly behind. Flex Electric is just doing a few more of those last light replacement work, and then they should be complete as well. So I want to share with you sort of where the budget stands overall. with all of our known expenses to date, starting with the soft costs, which were pre-construction and during construction costs, testing, design fees, inspections, furniture, not furniture, I apologize, but legal fees, the bonding costs, things like that. And this number, it needs to still be finalized because we don't have all the bonding and legal fees, but this is the placeholder that we've carried in our budget for the past year and a half. For direct expenditures, this is the budget line item that we've always had. I think it's going to end up being a little bit lower than this, but I'm just carrying the full amount for now. Our construction contracts and millwork is complete at $5,587,487.78. In terms of some additional expenditures, we did add the mechanical commissioning services, which has already shown its value in that a few mistakes were made in the installation work and they were addressed and resolved in the past few weeks. So the system is up and running as designed and planned, just in time for the winter. We also added to the budget the RFID sorting system, which was an additional $100,000. We are anticipating approximately about $80,000 cost to replace the evaporative cooler, which we discussed at our last meeting. There are two things that the design steering committee is still working on, which is exterior furniture. We're looking at replacing the rear plaza furniture and with some more durable and more individual seating. And then the Helderberg room wall panel replacement work, we are still in the process of finalizing exactly what we're doing for that panel system and picture rails for hanging. So I put some anticipated budget values there. So it brings us to a total project cost of $8,709,740.78. And just to recap where we started, and the easiest way to summarize it is by funding sources, is the maximum bond amount was $6,953,698. There was, per the referendum language, a capital account contribution of $1.4 million. And when we bid this project, we also rolled in the phase 1 improvements project that was a DLD grant that was done prior to the referendum. We put both projects together in our bid documents for efficiency and to save money so that you didn't have 8 or 9 contractors, but rather 5, and you weren't paying for multiple mobilizations and having contractors working sequentially. This way, everything was done at once. So with those 3 line items, our total project budget was $9,268,855. So right now we have a remaining balance of $559,114.22. Barbara?
I just have a question on the exterior furniture, $40,000. What would that include? I'm thinking of, things that you could get at BJ's or whatever that are a heck of a lot cheaper that you could replace every 5 years with, outdoor seating, couches, chairs. What are we getting for $40,000?
That's a heavy number because I also sort of wanted to cover, to your point from our last meeting, trying to do something to improve the island as well. Maybe do some sort of a trellis or like a gateway to disguise all those handicap parking signs. So I was keeping that idea in that number as well. 40,000 is a generous number. But what we were talking about at our last committee meeting was doing metal furniture so that it weathers better and it doesn't require so much maintenance and upkeep. At the rear plaza, you've got the teak and the other wood products that need a lot of maintenance over the seasons. And the recycled plastic table that's there is absorbing a lot of the pine sap and debris. So it's discoloring and it's not very attractive. So we were trying to find a material that didn't require a lot of maintenance and would hold up to the conditions at the rear plaza and hopefully not need to be replaced for 15 or 20 years. So that was the process. We're still developing it, and obviously we'll be conservative with our spending. We walked around the building last week and we looked at a few other places to add benches, like out at the corner of the addition where the butterfly garden is. We really want to take advantage of all the nice landscaping that you have and sort of keep folks away from the noisy part of Western Ave and really enjoy your site.
Right. I was just thinking, up in the Adirondacks, there are a lot of wood craftsmen, and I don't know, you're the expert on materials, if that would suffice, but they make beautiful Adirondack type chairs and tables and things such as that, you don't find in the catalog, but, would sort of fit in with our Adirondack area.
And you do have some already that are lovely and well used by the public. And you've got 2 Adirondack chairs that I think are most popular out there. So we'll see what we can do as a committee to find the right products and price point.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yep, this is Mike. What's the current status of the automated material sorting machine?
Tim, I'm going to defer to you on that one.
So it's a great question, and I was going to mention it later, but it comes up right now. So it's been fully installed. Staff training is ongoing, and software programming is ongoing. So I don't have an exact date when we're going to start using it, but I don't think it's going to be too far from now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I just have one more question.
Yes, Ms. Barber.
Has the furniture for the library finally come in? The seating furniture, the ones for the study room and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. All of the study room furniture is in. A number of the lounge pieces were delivered last week and yesterday. So I think with one exception of the large reading storytime chair, all the lounge pieces are in. There's a few punch list items that need to be addressed, like there's a few tabletops being replaced, but in general, almost everything has been received. And I was there on Friday doing professional photography, so I put out a lot of the lounge pieces and tables and chairs into spots so that I could take photos, and then I left them out for see if they would get some use.
Thank you. So pretty much everything that we wanted new, that we bought new, has come in except for the computers.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Just to update on building committee topics, or Kathy, would you rather do that at the building committee update?
Well, it just tracks what you were just talking about. Just mentioned that the design committee met in person at the library on this past Friday, and we looked at the existing furniture in the back and how it has some issues and needs replacing, and talked about different types of furniture that might hold up better and not get I guess you'd say too much discoloration, as Megan mentioned, and also just placement of benches outdoors and that type of thing. It was we talked about right in the back there near the butterfly garden having a bench and some benches in the front, some tables for the cafe seating area outdoors, and also just some plans for some area that just doesn't really have anything going on right now. So maybe some planters or something nice like that. So we just kind of walked around and just talked about different things. Oh, we also talked about the color of the paneling in the Helderberg room as well. Just trying to just decide on different color schemes, and I think we got one that seemed like it worked pretty well, that we were recommending. So that's pretty much, just walked around and just it was good to actually be in the space. So that was helpful. So that's really, I didn't because we were in person and we were walking around. I didn't take any notes, so I may have missed something. So Megan, if I missed anything, please feel free to chime in.
That was a good summary, and I forgot to even mention we are done with change orders. So
We're done with change orders?
the Science Steering Committee is done with that.
Okay.
Great. That's a big milestone to know you're that much closer to not even seeing me anymore at your board meetings.
Okay.
The only other thing we talked about, which Tim had brought to the committee's attention previously, was, as this photo shows, there are 2 trees, I believe, that obviously are leaning. They've been pushed over by the wind, and Lou was working on getting a quote to have them removed, which is going to be a little trickier than most tree removals just because of their location and the site configuration, but not insurmountable.
It's actually a total of 4 trees. It's really hard to get a photo of the 4 and still get like the building in it somewhere, but they're all, it's kind of a domino effect. And the second contractor we spoke to, actually both contractors we spoke to said, the first one said he couldn't do it. He didn't have the specialized equipment. And the second one said, these trees are going to fall and they are going to hit your new building. So we think the ground was disturbed by the very rainy summer, because this is a relatively recent, development.
So when we get, Tim, have we gotten a quote yet? I know that they were ballparking something, but did they give you an actual quote?
They did not give us an actual quote. The ballpark figure is 10,000. There's a crane involved. It may seem high, but I personally had a tree taken out of my yard recently, and for one tree that was straight up and down and not as big as these, it was 1,800. So and my neighbors have had the same situation. I don't think a ballpark of 10,000 seems unreasonable for this, but we'll wait and see what the regular or what the actual estimate is.
Okay.
Tim,
And
if you'd like.
I hope we get the estimate fast, because I don't like looking at that picture. Megan, you were going to say?
I was just going to say, if you want to share the estimate with me when you receive it, I can compare it to the other tree removal work we had done as a change order. So we have that for pricing comparison.
Great.
Is this something that after you get an estimate, we have to go through any kind of official process, or can you get people working on removing these trees immediately?
I believe it's the latter, according to my discussions with Lou, but it's honestly not something I do every day, so I don't know. Do you happen to know, Megan?
Well, this would follow the typical library procurement policy, and it being under, I believe, that $35,000 threshold. It doesn't need to be bid for your policies, but it needs to be, a written quote needs to be provided and reviewed. So once that happens, the director can then authorize the work to begin.
And there is some urgency related to obviously what you're looking at, but also they'd like to get in there before there's significant snow in their way.
Is this something that the design committee should review as a if it's above 10,000, or is this something of urgency that the director can approve?
If there were no construction budget and project, below 35,000 is my threshold of authority. But Megan's experience is that, when these kinds of things happen, it's allowed at the state level to consider this expense to be site preparation, even though if you technically look at that term, we're not still preparing the site, we're sort of cleaning it up. but it's a result of the construction process. And so it's okay to charge it to the construction budget. I just don't know, I guess the design steering committee, if it's meeting anyway, could certainly vote on it just to cover our bases. But I personally would like to just get it done.
I guess my question was, if you're capable of just getting it done as soon as possible, then great. And if you're not capable of getting it done as soon as possible because there has to be some type of approval, I would like us to put a resolution or approval in immediately, because the last thing we want is those trees dropping on the building, and we know this has to get done.
So should we put in a threshold? I mean, I know they ballparked 10,000, but it might be more. Should we authorize up to 15,000 or 12,000, or what do you think?
Any experience here, Megan?
Not specifically with tree removal on a project. I guess I would say, just to err on the side of caution so that you don't have to revisit it, maybe approve up to $15,000 with, review with the board president, just to confirm prior to contact or approving the proposal.
Tim, I'm willing to make a motion right now for up to $15,000 to be utilized at the discretion of the director to go ahead and remove fallen trees from the property of the library.
Seconded.
Okay, is all in favor?
Aye.
Say
Yeah, aye.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
It was Phil.
Phil,
Oh, Phil, sorry.
Okay,
opposed? All right, passes unanimously at 6:25. $15,000 for up to $15,000 are for tree removal at the discretion of the director.
And that was all I had to talk about this evening.
Okay. Well, thank you, Megan.
Always my pleasure. Do you want me to stay on? Is anything else going to come up that you need me for?
go and enjoy your family.
Well, I cut out.
Yeah.
I've done my job.
Yeah, I
Good, good. Merry
we
See, you are a tree expert.
Fine motor skills for the evening, so I'm. All right. If you need me, as always, feel free to reach out. Enjoy the holidays.
Thank you. You
You
too.
too. All right, so we have personnel. Now, did we have an additional item?
We do. So we have two personnel items. The first is that last month you approved the appointment of Martin Pohl as a part-time librarian 1, but it was approved as of starting December 1st, and he actually started December 3rd. So to be according to Hoyle, we need a motion to approve his employment starting December 3rd.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Yes.
A second? Barbara?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, passes unanimously at 6:27. And there was another item?
Yes. Slightly, I'm trying to announce some news without naming a name, but we have an employee in the circulation department who will be retiring in February. And when that employee retires, it's going to touch off the need to promote someone to replace the employee and then to replace the person promoted. And so the particular position is one that requires a lot of training. And so what I would like to do is to suggest that we promote clerk Carly Drislane to senior clerk effective January 1st, so that we can get kind of a month of training underway before the other employee retires. We do think that this is going to be essentially budget neutral or even positive for the budget because we're not replacing the employee who's going to retire until she actually does retire. And then we expect that even though we will need a replacement for Carly Drislane if we promote her this evening, that the civil service clerk list is very dry, and we don't imagine we're going to be able to hire anytime soon to replace Carly. So Carol Cott and Margaret Garrett and Phil Berardi and I worked with the numbers. It would be a $2.98 per hour raise for Carly to go from clerk to senior clerk. But again, we think it's going to be budget neutral.
Just a quick question. We don't have to post the position?
Margaret's done the work with the civil service folks, and then Phil has sort of informally canvassed his whole department, and these are the people that are interested in moving up, basically. So in other words, there's not more than one person in the building who's interested in taking this position. So
It's nice that we can promote from within, so that's great.
I personally agree. She's a very fine worker. So, but I think we would need a motion or obviously further questions.
So is there a motion to, I'm sorry, did you have a question, Barbara?
I said I'll move that.
Oh,
appointment.
okay.
Second.
All right. And all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, passes unanimously at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Carly.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so let's see. Try to get back to my agenda here. All right. So we have the treasurer's report for October and November 2021. Tony?
Hi, everybody. So starting with October, and again, my apologies for missing the meeting last month. But reviewing October, you'll notice that there was a net loss for the month of about $336,000. When comparing to prior months, mainly September, the expenses were larger in October than September, and the difference appears to be timing of payroll, not larger expenses in other categories. The net loss was appropriately reflected on the balance sheet and the capital account. You'll notice that the loss presented increased by the amount of the operating loss, and that's correct. The rest of the income statement showed expenses that were just similar to prior months, and nothing really stood out in looking at the income statement, but there was a lot of activity on the balance sheet. As you know from prior months, I take a look at the cash movement to see if the cash is going down or if current liabilities are going up commensurate with the operating expenses. That did occur. And likewise with prior months, the long-term debt, well, I guess they're assets, but the treasury bills, debt of the US government, but assets to us, did go down commensurate with changes in construction and process going up, which is a long-term asset. This has been done in prior months commensurate with the renewal project. As those expenses get realized, they move from one category to another. Accounts payable changed a little bit just based on operating expenses as well. Other than that, nothing really stood out in terms of the balance sheet or income statement that changed substantially. Again, just dollar amounts changing between categories commensurate with what happened in prior months. For November, I do have to say I just kind of briefly looked at the November statements just due to the timing of when I got them. I had a couple notes, but nothing too in-depth, but I'll go over what I have. For November, the big thing is that the expenses appears to have gone up by like 200K compared to October. I went back and looked at 2020, and I'm pulling that up now, and the same thing happened in 2020. It looks like there's some sort of event that happens in November. Again, I didn't have enough time to really go through the details, but that change in the expense level is commensurate with last year's number. And to put it into perspective, the November 2020, the amount was 505,000 for the loss. Currently, it's 557,000. So in prior months, it's about 250K. So the expenses did increase, but I did not have time to tick and tie what the difference is. The balance sheet had two big changes to it for November. Construction in process changed by about 4 million, and the amount due to the Guilderland Central School District changed by about 4 million. They offset each other, so net, there wasn't a big change. I'm assuming something was discussed at last month's meeting that I missed that explains that, but again, I didn't have time to go through that thoroughly. And that was the only major thing on the November balance sheet and income statement. So
I think
a quick summary. The October statements seemed sufficient and fine when comparing to prior months and prior periods. November, I need to spend more time looking at, maybe report to the board at the next meeting because I just didn't have time to look through it thoroughly. But there were two big changes that I don't have an explanation for at this time.
So I believe one of them for November is the annual payment of the invoice to New York State Retirement, which is approximately $250,000. And there are a number of different payment plans, but we always take the most aggressive one by paying it all at once, which saves us about 1% or $2,500 on our overall budget. So I'm guessing that's what you see there for November.
Okay. Okay.
So is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report for October and November?
Move it.
Barbara?
I'll make a second.
And everybody, if in favor, can you say aye or raise your hand?
Appropriate to ask a question right now?
Oh, sure.
Given that Tony hasn't had time to review the November numbers, should we be voting on both October and November?
Maybe we should vote pending the explanation in November. So maybe we should just accept October. So with that change, is there a motion to accept October and with November still pending? Barbara?
Just a quick question. I think Tim sort of explained $250,000 that, you know, Tony wasn't familiar had happened, which is, he said it happened last year and it happened again this year. And I think Tim tried to explain the difference. So either way, I mean, I have no problem, but I think we could safely approve both if we wanted to.
I think Vanessa has a point. I mean, Tony did not hadn't really had a chance to really review November, and I know that there's that explanation, but maybe we should have a more thorough review of November before we vote on it. So with that change, there's a motion then by Barbara and seconded. I'm sorry, who seconded the motion?
Peter.
Peter, to accept the October 2021 treasurer's report. If all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Passes unanimously at 6:37 p.m. Okay, I have under Treasurer's Report authority to invest operating funds. Do you want to speak to that, Tony? Or Tim? I'm not sure.
I can certainly summarize it if that would be helpful. So
okay.
Basically, every October, we get 90 to 95% of our annual tax revenue in a single check from the Guilderland School District. And what we've done for the last, I want to say 4 or 5, maybe 6 years is we've come up with a plan to do a CD laddering investment for that money for $2.4 million out of the usually approximately 3.9 that comes in October. And so roughly speaking, what happens is that we invest that 2.4 million upon receipt, although we need to get permission to do that. And then once a month, we draw down about $250,000, which generally covers the monthly operating expenses for the library. So it's a way of earning what small amount of interest you can earn in today's marketplace rather than just sitting the money in an account. The last year, we had to make a change just based on the level of the economy. Our financial advisor at Capcom basically said there were no CD products available. And so he recommended that the next most money-making option was treasury notes, which, you know, I'm not trying to editorialize, but as of last year, the interest rates were 0.4 to 0.8% on treasury notes. So I guess you got to have a lot of money to earn any money. But anyway, so we need a board resolution to invest in treasury notes again this year. The same market conditions do continue, and there aren't really CD products available. So I believe in your packet, but certainly right in front of me, there's the motions that we passed last year. So I could read those out loud. And, you know, the money really does not change. You know, we just do the same thing every year. Tony, anything to add on that?
No, I don't have anything to add. I do recall that discussion coming up last year in terms of the rates of the CD products and the treasury bills. I remember it was you and Carol discussed about the laddering. Your statement summarized last year's, and if it's commensurate with the operations this year, then I have nothing to add.
I guess I would just add one thing by, I'll go ahead and read the motion that we passed last year to you so that this will show you that what I'm about to add. Motion to invest in the tax levy $2.4 million in U.S. Treasury notes and $600,000 in a money market account with Capcom. So the $600,000 is kind of the cost of doing business with any bank. Like it's your money, but you need to kind of leave it sitting there. And that gives them, you know, the ability to operate, you know, as they deal with all of their customers. We obviously could spend that money if we had some sort of an emergency, but it's the basic practice when we were at NBT with this. And it's also now the basic practice at Capcom that they like you to have that 600 just kind of sitting there. Tony.
Yeah, I will just add one quick thing. Thinking back to the conversation last year, we did have a discussion about other types of investment products, but New York State restricts what the library can invest the money in. So your options of different types of investments or variety of investments is severely limited. And that's why the conversation went to treasuries, because New York State allows that. So if there is ever an audit in the future, this level of investment would not be flagged as unreasonable. Basically, the state doesn't want the library taking unnecessary risk with public funds.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So yeah, I remember when we first started doing this, and the gentleman, Karen Carpenter Palumbo, I think had actually recommended this gentleman to come in from Capcom, and he spoke with us for a while. Could we postpone voting on this motion and see if he is available at the next meeting that we're going to have? Only so that he could even go into more detail about the treasury notes and go through all the different options that are available. And it would also allow us as board members to take a look at the numbers ourselves. The numbers were pretty low that you just mentioned for the rate. So would it be possible to do that? Do we have to do this tonight?
So my answer to that would be, I don't know. I think that, and I can tell, I think that Carol Cott is not logged on to the meeting. But I think it's kind of a package deal, like that we take the 2.4 million and he purchases the treasuries all at once. So I it
I'm not saying that we wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
I'm not saying. I just would like him, because obviously we changed from doing the CDs to the treasury note, and I think there could potentially be some other options. That's just an opinion. So I would be interested in seeing what the options are that are allowable and what the current rates are, just so that I can look and I can make a decision personally if I think that he's giving us the best rate of return. And then if it's only a Capcom issue and it could be potentially offered somewhere else, I would even be open to exploring the opportunity. Any bit of money that we bring in that helps offset some cost is a great thing. And I just want to look at the numbers before we vote on it, if that's all right.
It's like Barbara. Yeah.
Tony, you recall the discussion that we had last year, and really the only two products, because of the rules and regulations of New York State, were the federal treasuries or CDs. I mean, we can't go into any other investment product or anything else. So do you recall any product that could be used?
There's an audit guide that New York State puts out every year. I forget the name of it. I can probably find it because I read it last year. But the other product that is allowed are, I think, bonds of New York State, like New York State issued bonds. I think that's the third option that's permissible. But there are rules on that. And I don't know what the rates are in New York State bonds. The reporting's different, I know, for those, but I think that's an option. And then for other federal bonds, they don't look at agency bonds. It has to just be treasury bonds. So not all federal bonds were created equal, but I can find that audit guide. I think it's pretty easy to locate. And then if I can get a digital copy or whatnot, I can just give it to Jenna and have her send it out, or find some way to disseminate it between all the different board members. If I recall, it's a handful of pages long, but there's one page that specifically addresses all the different options and lists them all out. So that's helpful. That's easy to obtain and probably easy to send out between all of the board members. But the guide does not include returns. So it doesn't include rate of returns. That would have to be looked up separately for each item. And I'm assuming Capcom probably has that more readily. Well, actually, some of those people probably don't know, because some of those might be dependent upon the rates at the time. Actually, Phil just said something. Maybe that's something. Maybe that's the.
Vanessa?
I just had a question because I'm unclear. Who on the library staff is responsible for making recommendations about investments and managing them?
Well, currently no one, but it is Carol Cott's vacant position. And I do, with hopefully respect to Peter, I do believe that she's had this conversation with our banker at Capcom already. But that's just, I'm not positive. I believe that she's, she does it every fall, checks into the investment landscape. So it's the vacant fiscal officer position.
It sounds like there might be a little bit of maybe a little more information that we might be able to get before deciding on this motion, unless it's a matter of urgency. I mean, is it something we could put off to our next meeting after we get more information?
I think you could put it off, and I don't mean this in any serious way, but obviously you're losing a month's worth of income from this plan. I wonder if there's some middle ground where you could pass it subject to either myself or Carol Cott or Mike Horilchak as Finance Committee Chair, or Peter having a subsequent conversation with our banker. And if there is no better option, I wonder if there's a way to construct a resolution tonight that says, after further investigation, if this is indeed the best option, we authorize it.
So a motion to invest 2.4 million in US Treasury notes if that is the best option.
Right, and also 600,000 in a money market account with Capcom.
So we'll add that US Treasury notes if as long as it's the best option, or leave that a little bit open, so that if another product is giving us a better rate of return, that we could go with that. I mean, I'm not really sure how to construct this exactly. I mean, Tony, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think it would make sense. I do think it might be helpful to have that audit guide available to the board, just so they can see some of the limitations. I know Phil sent something. I'm trying to look through that as well to see if that summarizes it. That might help. I guess give Peter some reassurance of the different options, and also the other board members some. I guess they can see in black and white the landscape that the library is restricted to. So I mean, yes, in summary, yes, but I just want to find that guide.
Should we have a motion tonight?
Sorry, Kathy, I apologize. Could I make a motion, assuming this is allowed, to table the current motion granting authority to invest the operating funds pending further information being provided to the board, so that we can work in our best fiduciary capacity to make the right decision for the Guilderland Library and the residents of Guilderland?
I just hope.
Yeah. There was no motion actually made, right? We were just discussing the possibility of making it.
Peter just made a motion to table the
discussion. All right, so if we don't say motion, we're going to table the discussion of granting authority, something to that effect, until the next meeting, so that information can be provided to the board. If we want to change it that way. Noreena's correct on that. There wasn't an actual motion made, so she's absolutely right.
I just hope you would specify who's going to get this information and in what form. And
so if it's, I'm just asking for it to be provided to the board in an email form, or if we go as far as asking the gentleman to come from Capcom to go ahead and talk to us about the different options. He's come before, and it never was an issue for him to come before. I just think it would be beneficial, especially with the fact that, again, we have so many new board members. It's great for all of us, including myself, who've been here for a while, to ask questions again and just make sure we're all on the same page.
But I guess I think, as Tim pointed out, we have then $2.4 million that's uninvested for a month.
We'll probably lose about $100. That's just the truth. We'll lose about $100. If the numbers that he's putting out there right now, it's probably what we're going to end up losing. It's going to be insignificant, really, for the month.
So I'm happy to invite him. Why don't I contact him and say, we'd like to invite you to come to the January board meeting, or to provide in writing as soon as possible why this is, in your view, the best way for the library to invest its funds.
Perfect.
Sorry, I have a question. I mean, I can totally appreciate the representative from Capcom coming to inform us about their particular product, but I do have a little bit of an issue with someone selling us something coming to inform our decision making. I would prefer if it was someone, a third party, ideally our staff person, which I understand the position's vacant. So the only reason I say that is I'm fine with us learning more information, but that's about a specific product from a particular vendor and doesn't really give us the objective sort of information to compare or understand if that is the best investment.
Peter made a motion to table the discussion. Is there a second to that motion? Phil?
I second it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll take a roll call if people want to, are in favor of tabling the discussion. Barbara? Phil? Vanessa?
I'm in favor of tabling the discussion about approving authority, but I'm confused because I feel like we've not resolved the discussion that needs to happen as far as next steps.
Mike?
Yeah, I think I'm going to vote no on this one.
Peter?
Favor.
Tony?
I'm going to vote no too, because I don't know what the next steps are. I still think it's nebulous.
Norina?
Yeah, well, I'm of the same opinion. I think we need to discuss it so we know what our next steps are. Is someone going to come and educate us on what it is that we can do with this money? Because if we table this discussion now, then this discussion will come up again in January, at which point we still won't have someone to have educate us. And at that point, we lose 2 months of having invested. So why don't we talk about this now? Is there a better person that can educate us about different options that would be a third party, like Vanessa said, that would not be interested in selling us a product? So my vote is no for that reason.
Kathy?
And I vote no as well. I think it is rather nebulous what we're going to do next. I know that Tony was going to send us an audit guide, but I'm not sure how much that would inform us. I'm not sure what the vote was, but Barbara?
Well, I was just going to say, why don't we ask Carol Cott, because she did a lot of investigation last year, if she would be willing to, to present her findings from last year. And maybe that's the third party that everybody seems to be looking for, because she and Tony spent a lot of time last year, going back actually a couple of years, because we would just invest the money in a money market. And I don't know if it was Tony or Carol that said, geez, there's a better way of laddering this, and did a lot of investigation as to what's allowed, what's not allowed. And, came up with the idea of, at that time, laddering the CDs, which worked out very, very well. And then last year, worked with the same individual because the CD rates were so low. And not that the treasuries were that much more, but they were a little bit more. And so we went to that product. But would that satisfy people if Carol would be willing to share her knowledge?
Vanessa?
I think that sounds good. Just to get back to the motion that was on the floor, I would like to change my vote to no. I don't know where that leaves us with the count to leave the discussion open. But I also had a question about, is this an annual action? Because it would be helpful to be presented with this, with a little bit of a layout, again, a reminder of what the current choices are. I don't know if this, state ever changes their rules about what our options are, and then a little bit of a breakdown of what a couple of options might mean. I think in the future that could help us make a quicker decision if this vote was or this resolution was accompanied by some sort of presentation explanation.
Well, I think.
Can I just share something on a personal level? So in New York State, I have my SIE, my Series 6, my 63, and my principal's license to deal with investments for clients. I don't think I've ever sat in front of a client. In fact, like 100% confirmed you, I've never sat in front of a client. So we're not going to talk about rates or what it's done in the past or any of that stuff. Just sign here. That's exactly what we're doing here. I'm kind of disappointed that, one of the things that we talk about is fiduciary capacity, but I guess we're just not going to worry about that tonight.
I don't think anybody's saying that, Peter, with all due respect. I think we're actually saying the opposite.
Vanessa, do you know what the rate is here? Do you know
Peter,
what, do you know what
listening to my questions about wanting to understand better what the options are, that's
Right.
not counter to what you're suggesting.
So what I'm saying is, if we don't table it, we'll be taking a vote tonight to go ahead and authorize $2.5 million.
No, I think what people, and we can vote no. And voting no is always an option, but I think what people were voting no against was they wanted to continue discussion about how we move forward in making a decision.
So the motion was to table this. It wasn't the ending of discussion to discuss it. I know, and I mean,
You said table the
I know
discussion.
you were talking to table the motion is what I'm trying to do. I want to table the idea of voting on that motion until the next meeting. And I know for a fact you were speaking, we kind of just kept going with the vote. So out of all fairness, I know that you had things that you want to talk about, and I think we have to continue to discuss what would be sufficient for him coming to the meeting, or have Carol Kopp present it, or would the numbers be sufficient, or would an email be sufficient? I'm fine with that, and I think that discussion has to continue. This is specifically saying we're going to table the idea of voting on the motion that would give the authority to make that investment. So you're absolutely right. There needs to be more discussion about this, and it should probably happen as soon as we finish the vote. So that's all I'm saying.
To clarify, we literally repeated a motion that was to table the discussion. So if that was clarified, I think.
I apologize if that's not what I meant, Vanessa. So it was to table this vote to make sure that we had the right information, we had all the numbers, and we can go ahead and make an informed decision.
Well, we don't have a majority on either side of this, so I'm not sure what
And I
that,
think that's how we
what
came
that
out.
happened.
We all,
Excuse me?
I'm
Meredith?
sorry, Kathy.
Yes?
Go ahead. Oh, I was saying
Um,
that's how we came out. We came out, majority was for no, let's continue talking. So I think we are mostly in agreement that we are continuing to talk. I was just wondering if this is a question, is there a finance committee or that could, I mean, and I'm in agreement with Carol coming and talking about different options as well.
Well, I know Mike was looking to have an audit committee meeting, which didn't happen because we couldn't find a convenient time. Is this something that the audit committee would look at?
No, the finance.
Okay.
would look at-
Finance?
Yeah, I think this falls under the finance committee, and I would be happy to try and schedule a finance committee meeting as soon as possible to discuss this. I do know, I mean, from this conversation, it seems that there are members of the board who I don't think are on the finance committee that want to have input or interest in this also. So I don't want to, necessarily exclude them from having that input if they want that. So, but I'm certainly open to, if we want to either have the finance committee take some role to investigate this, or even to delegate this to some degree to the finance committee. I'm open to any of those possibilities.
I think that that's a good idea. I think that because we don't have a majority of 6 people wanting to do one thing or another, I think sending it to the committee to further investigate is a good idea. I think that's probably the best action right now, because otherwise we just continue to discuss this, and because we really don't have a full board, we don't have enough people to form a majority of 6, because we have to have a majority of the whole, even though we don't have 11 people. So I think just to move along and not just spend so much time on this. I think Mike, if you could convene the finance committee, that would be good, and then we'll go from there. Is that okay?
Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Tony, if you can get your hands on that document you're referring to about what is allowed and send that off to the board email address so that gets to everybody on the finance committee, I would appreciate that. And
Sure.
if Tim reaches out to Carol Kopp, if that's who would do it, and sees if she's available to either join in on that meeting or provide some information in background so that they have everything they need and can walk out of that meeting feeling great, that would be fantastic as well.
All right, sounds like a plan. Tony, I guess we still have the check register.
The check register for November, the same with the financial statements. I looked at them, but just cursory. I didn't go through them and tick and tie the numbers.
So I have it on the agenda as check register for December 2021.
Yeah, the one that came out yesterday, I didn't have time between yesterday afternoon and today's meeting to tick and tie it. Just too close to the meeting.
Oh, okay. So did you have it? You had it for November, you said?
Yeah, November I looked over and talked about it when I was doing the October financial statements. That one I looked at.
Okay.
That one previously discussed, but the one for November through December I did not look at yet.
Okay. So we don't
Kathy?
need to accept the check register because we don't know what it is yet.
Well, Kathy, may I ask a question there?
Sure.
My understanding is that we can't write any checks until we have the board approval for each one, which is the board approval of the check register. So all I can suggest is an alternate procedure where everyone looks at the check register and asks any questions about any of the line items on it. But I don't think we can wait a month to pay our bills.
Okay. That being said, is there any questions on the check register? Is there a motion to approve the check register for December? Barbara? Is there a second? Phil? All in favor of approving the check register, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, we approve the check register as of 7:05 p.m. All right, now we have the directors and department heads reports for November 2021. Tim?
Great. As you see on my report, I've spent the majority of my time working to fill the assistant director position and the fiscal officer position. Assistant director is going currently at the moment much better than fiscal officer and will probably get resolved first. I've also been obviously working on the construction project, the COVID committee, various labor management and HR matters. And I have sort of a gift for sounding sarcastic, and that's not what I mean, but it is very, very hard to fill the assistant director position and the fiscal officer position while there is no one in either. I get so mired down in operational details of the library that, to have any time to do anything constructive other than react to moment stuff is quite difficult. Nevertheless, we are making progress on that. We have had 3 assistant director interviews this week, 2 more next week, and then there'll be a second round of some subset of those people. In the other reports, I note with some sadness the idea that Lowell Knapp of Guilderland is closing the doors on Our Town Guilderland, excuse me, which has been a great vehicle for both advertising and our monthly director's column. So Luann and I will look for an alternative way to get that news out. In the circulation department, I note that most of the circulation numbers are up. Really neat story about Maura Powers Smith's Night Owls book club, where the actual author came into the meeting virtually. He had the perhaps good taste to wait, most of the way till the meeting was over so that he didn't influence the discussion. But he came on board to thank people for discussing his book. So that was pretty cool. I think it's appropriate to note, again, with sadness, the departure of Ann Wempel-Person, effective January 4th, approved last month in the personnel actions. But I want to thank Ann for her 14 years of dedicated service to Guilderland Public Library. She grew up in Guilderland. And some of her great programs that she's worked on recently are the Drug Take Back Day twice a year with the town of Guilderland, community caregivers projects that have done a lot to brighten the days of some retired and perhaps shut-in people, coordinating local history efforts at the library, and much more. So I'd like to wish Ann well in her future endeavors, and also welcome Martin Pohl. We talked about him earlier. He's not the replacement for Ann's position, but replacement for a part-time position. And I just want to point out that the Canopy streaming video service was, instituted last month, and so far has had 1,724 unique visits. So I think, and I'm not pointing the finger at you or me or anyone, I think there's sort of a tendency to discount those portions of library service that are done online, but they're really, as a fellow director of mine put it, always rocking 24/7. So 1,724 people watching one or more videos is pretty cool. And lastly, the new shed for the expanded maintenance shed in the back is arriving tomorrow. So thanks to the Design Steering Committee and full board for approving that expense. So
is there a motion to accept the directors and departments heads reports for November 2021? Phil, is there a second? Vanessa? Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Motion passes at 7:10 p.m. Okay. Now we have committee reports. Audit, Mike?
So we did receive the final version of the final audit report. We were unable, committee members were available to meet, so we have not had our meeting yet. We're hoping to meet in the next few weeks, and if all goes well, we will be forwarding the audit report to the full board at the January meeting. Should I move on to the Finance Committee?
Yep.
The Finance Committee has not met yet. As we spoke earlier, we're going to be scheduling a meeting to deal with the investment issue. But also, my understanding is that typically in January is when the Finance Committee begins its work on the budget. So I anticipate that the Finance Committee will be gearing up and getting to work in earnest in the beginning of the new year.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Building and grounds, Barbara?
Okay, building and grounds hasn't met because of our new construction, obviously. But the long-range planning, we have put in the packets our current long-range plan.
Mm-hmm.
And as I explained last month, we met with the Upper Hudson specialist on long-range plans, and she suggested that we simply approve the current plan for the coming year. And it will take about 6 months, she estimates, in order to get all the community input, the staff input, and everything that goes into, the creation of a long-range plan.
Okay, sounds like you got your work cut out for you. Cafe committee,
Wait a minute,
Peter?
Tim wants to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe the point last week was, last month, I believe the idea was that we had asked for a resolution to have this plan be in effect for the remainder of the year. And if I remember correctly, some board members said, well, I don't want to vote on that until I've seen it. So that's why it's in your packet. But I believe we're looking for a vote to extend our current plan, because otherwise we don't have a plan in effect per New York State regulations.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the long-range plan, our current plan, as to extend? I guess is there a motion to extend our current plan?
I move to extend our current long-range plan pending the modification of the date through 2022. Is that what's required?
Okay.
I think so, yeah, yeah.
Is there a second? Barbara?
Mm.
Okay. Everyone in favor of continuing the current long-range plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes 7:13 p.m. All right, Cafe Committee, Peter.
I can report that the Cafe Committee did not meet during that month.
Okay, let's see. Foundation, Norina.
Well, they didn't meet this month. They were too close to the holidays. I do have a question about
And
the
I'll-
cafe. If anyone has the answer, what is the status? Do we have someone actually doing that? I missed the November meeting, so I don't know if that was discussed before, but I checked the minutes and it didn't seem like it was discussed. Do we have someone actually going in?
Oh, no, we, at our last Cafe Committee meeting, if I may, Kathy,
Yes.
decided that we needed to take another look at the RFP and perhaps lighten up the initial standards. And I certainly agreed with that decision. I would just say that I've, thought about it every once in a while, but I have to prioritize getting these vacant administrative positions filled. So personally, I've been unable to do much of anything on the cafe, although I have had a few exploratory conversations with people about it.
I think
So personnel, Norina?
we have not met.
Okay, now we have policy, which has been meeting. I have a customer service policy and bylaws. So that sounds like a more lengthy explanation. Barbara?
Okay, on the customer service policy, I'm wondering if people can take a quick look at it. It basically says that the library staff strives to provide prompt, friendly, efficient, confidential, and accurate service to all patrons at all times. And all library customers will be treated respectfully, and the library will not discriminate in the delivery of services on the basis of actual or perceived race, color, national origin, ethnicity, ancestry, citizenship, religion, creed, political affiliation, sex, gender, physical or mental disability, personal appearance, social or economic status. But then it says, again, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or any other category, etc., protected by federal, state, or local laws. I don't know if, Phil, you usually been able to look at things. Are we just repeating sex, gender, physical, or mental disability, or?
They're actually different category. They're different qualities. So it's not a repeat. They both have the word sex in them, but one is sex and gender, the other's sexual orientation, gender identity, which are actually different considerations.
Oh, okay. That was just a clarification I was looking at. So this one, we basically presented last time around, and the policy committee sort of made it a little bit better and trying to encompass all the different categories. And you really could vote on it tonight if that's your will.
Is there a motion to accept the customer service policy as written?
Yes.
Phil? And second, Vanessa? Anybody who is in favor of this policy, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes at 7:18 p.m. Accepting the new customer service policy. And there's another policy matter, the Board of Trustees. Barbara?
We were asked to look at our bylaws in the event that there was a vote to change our current composition from 11 to 9 and to highlight the changes that would have to be made. And Phil, Vanessa, Mike, and myself tried to go over the bylaws and clarify what things would have to be changed in the event that we were to vote to reduce the number. And the other area that we were asked to look at, if in any case, the nominating committee definitions of duties didn't seem to be quite clear enough to many of us. And so the area that's highlighted in yellow, we try to clarify that a little bit better, that if we don't reduce the number of trustees down to 9, then we would be open to bringing on 2 new volunteers to fill the 2 vacant positions. And if so, that it would be the nominating committee that would have the duty to basically, have the staff advertise for the position that it's available and ask for resumes, and do like the original screening, and then either present a candidate or candidates to the board for their review.
Okay, and Barbara, this is a first reading, so there was not a vote expected this evening, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Any comments?
Yeah, I think it's worth, I think the second one is pretty straightforward. But for the first one, I think it's worth having a discussion tonight, in part because we need 8 out of 9 members to be on board for a bylaws change. And if we don't see that even being remotely possible, then we should instead focus on filling 2 seats. But if we think that we have 8 out of 9 members on board with this change, then I'm comfortable with not trying to fill those seats, knowing that we can enact that change at the next board meeting.
Well, since there's only 8 of us here tonight, that would be all of us.
If 8 people in this meeting were comfortable with it, then I'd be pretty comfortable with punting on trying to fill the remaining seats right now.
In fairness, since Marcia's not here, I mean, if there were even 7, it would be worth it to give it a try to put through vote.
So assuming people have had an opportunity to read this, does anybody have any questions or anything they want to discuss about it?
Well, I think at the last meeting, at the emergency meeting, Mike had some concerns with changing the number from 9 to 11. After reviewing this with the policy committee, do you still see any drawbacks to going to 9 as opposed to 11?
So I had concerns that are, I guess, related to, so the bylaw amendments as we have them right here. So we are constrained a little bit because we are, by our charter, unless we go through the process of amending the charter, we are stuck with the 5-year board terms. So that means if we shift down to 9 members, we would have at least 1 year out of every 5-year cycle where there's only 1 single board member being elected out of the 9-member board. Also, just given how the current terms of the existing board members line up, just given where the vacancies occurred, we kind of discussed this over at the policy committee, but we're going to end up with, without doing some sort of shuffling that would require having some sort of partial terms or doing some maneuvering, we're going to have 1 year that has 3 trustees elected and other years and multiple years that only have 1 trustee elected. And I'm not thrilled about that, that arrangement. I don't like the idea on a 9-member board of having years where only 1 single trustee is coming up. It really is kind of removing the public's ability to have any say over the board's composition. And especially if there's sometimes 2 years in a row where there's only 1 seat coming up, that means we'll have only 2 seats coming up in a 2-year period out of a 9-member board. So I'm not thrilled about that. And I like the idea of trying to go forward with the charter amendment and switching down to 3-year terms and then reducing the board in conjunction with that. But if that's not going to happen, or if that's only a possibility in the future, I have reservations about going down to 9 without making those further changes.
Barbara?
I'm sorry, Barbara, I didn't see your hand.
Oh,
I think Phil was first.
okay. Bill?
Okay. So I think while updating the charter to have a shorter term on the board is definitely something that I think we should pursue as well. The fact is that does take, we were told, anywhere 6 to 12 months to really make that all happen. And if we make that happen, we have to then go back again and adjust what seats are available when and try to line everything up. So there's going to still be, assuming that this goes through and we reduce to 9 members, we're still going back and making changes to this again to realign where the elections are and how long they're at. I don't suspect that we could make this change down to 9 members and that we would stay exactly as things are with 1 person this year, 3 people that year, et cetera, for 5 years straight. I don't think that's going to remain. It's going to have to be addressed again if we make any other changes. But if we do make this change now, it means that we don't have to bring on 2 more new members, where therefore shortened terms, and where for the board to function, we still have a lot of new members trying to understand where we all fit in and trying to get enough consensus to actually get things done. We really need to get the board functional. I think there's a lot of things that can be done beyond this once we take this step so that we can actually have a majority vote on a lot of issues to change the way the board functions and make it more efficient for the library. Including things like consolidating some of the committees so that there are less committees with more functionality under them, and we'll have less meetings where, 9 committees didn't meet and 2 did, or things like that. There'll always be something for a committee to do that month. So I don't think we should necessarily punt this and wait until we get the charter done. I think we should try both things. And after the charter change happens, assuming that's a route the board wants to go, we're going to have to just readdress seats and elections and committees again anyway. But it gets us to the point where we're more functional now and more stable now so that we can actually serve the library better.
Barbara?
The other point that I forgot to mention is that we also had the discussion about the 3-year charter change, and Tim was going to investigate and share with us later under new business, how to do that. But to be perfectly upfront, and I've shared this over the last 2 meetings, I am not sold on reducing our number of trustees in any way. COVID has sort of changed the way the board acts and performs. However, hopefully we will be back to pre-COVID times. And my experience has been that the board functioned quite well. We accomplished our tasks. For the most part, we were pretty much on board as a group for most votes. In fact, just about all the votes. And so I really don't see making a quick change in haste for a board that has functioned quite well over the years. That's been my experience.
Is anyone else, Vanessa?
I just wanted to say that I don't think anyone is proposing making a change in haste, and I would actually take issue with just, oh, the board functioned fine for all these years and voted unanimously as evidence to keep it the same. I actually think it is good to have the board have different opinions. The part that becomes unmanageable is the number of views that get heard, especially on lengthy topics, that make things a little less manageable. I am in favor of having a variety of views. We represent a diverse community, so I think it would be important to continue to have different views, but we have repeatedly proven by our length of meeting, tenor and tone of them, that something is just not functioning quite right. And I think it's upon us to make a change that addresses that. I'd like to point out that this other, albeit more straightforward and not particularly controversial proposal to the bylaws change as well requires 8 out of the 9 remaining board members in order to change. And I'd also like to point out that had one other person disagreed about the meeting minutes earlier today, especially the meeting that Kathy and Narina had to abstain from, we would not have been able to accomplish the mere function of approving meeting minutes because we wouldn't have had enough to have just a simple majority vote on that. So we are in a very treacherous, in my opinion, position when it comes to making decisions and taking action as a board. And so for those reasons, I am in favor of taking a close look at how we can function better, one of which is includes reducing our board size to 9, exploring reducing terms so we don't have the attrition and resignation that has been proven over these last years of 11 members, as well as some committee configuration changes. So I don't see this as being like a one-off knee-jerk change. I think it has the potential to be a part of a strategic move to function better as a board.
Anyone else want to speak to this? All right, well, it's correct that we're missing a member tonight, unfortunately. So should we just think about this? I mean, I know that I'm not sure what the mood of the board is in general. I mean, I could definitely see reducing it. Having been, and Barbara knows, being on the school board, it's a 9-member board and it also has 3-year terms. So that whole situation kind of makes sense to reduce the terms when you reduce the board. But I think we'll have to just continue to think about this, and we should probably move on to our next discussion. And I know that's Vanessa, the COVID Action Committee. I'm sorry, Phil.
I don't think we can just move on. I think we need to at least have a straw poll. If we have even 6 people that think this is a good plan, then, with the hope that potentially we can get that up to 8, it's worth us doing nothing today. But if we've got more people in the meeting today that are uninterested in this change, then we have to focus on getting 2 more people on this board, or we're not going to be able to function. Or one absence is enough to make us an unusable board.
Okay. Well, we'll take a poll. I guess the question is, are you Are you in favor of the 9-member board? So I'll just take a roll. Barbara, I think you've already made yourself clear that you're not in favor. Phil?
In favor.
Vanessa?
In favor.
Peter?
Opposed.
Tony?
Absolutely in favor of reducing.
Norina?
Yes, I would be in favor of reducing as well.
And Mike?
Not in favor at this time. I would be in favor in conjunction with a change in the term length, but I don't like the idea of just reducing the size of the board while leaving the terms as they are.
So it looks like we have 3 opposed. So at this point, we're not going to get 8 members.
How about you, Kathy?
I'm in favor.
Okay.
So
So I think before we move on, we need to talk about who is taking what actions to try and bring 2 more members to our board by the January meeting.
let's see. I lost track. Who's on the nominating committee?
That should be the nominating committee. It should, do the original screening.
It's Marcia, Phil, and Norina.
After we get to that part of the agenda tonight, it will be.
Okay.
So, so what have, is there a decision with regards to what's happening?
Well, I think we have 3 members who are not in favor of the change. And since we need 8 of 9, I don't think we have it. So yes, Vanessa?
So this is a little bit of, I don't know exactly how to pose this question or how we address it, but there was a proposed bylaw change by the policy committee that impacted some of the language around the nominating committee. And I don't have the original in front of me, but what I guess what I want to ask is if there is consensus that the nominating committee can complete this function with the bylaws as written, since we can't actually approve this change that we thought more thoroughly covered this scenario without 8 out of 9 board members approving it.
I can speak to that and also so under the existing version of the bylaws, not the change 2 that's in the board packet here, but the existing version, the nominating committee already is given the responsibility of presenting a candidate to the board for approval, for the board's approval to fill a vacancy. So it's already, we made some changes to kind of try and clarify the role of the nominating committee and to give them a little more of a role with a first vacancy. But as for subsequent vacancies, the nominating committee already had the role to select a candidate to present to the board for the board's approval. So I don't think there's any issue with that. Just on the bigger, the broader issue, I could make a suggestion.
Wait, I'm sorry, Mike, before you move on, sure. I just recalled the conversation being around the language not matching the practice. And so the nominating committee bringing forth 1 person, and I'll be generous enough to assume that means 1 person per vacancy and not make it literal as 1 person and we need 2. For approval did not sound like the scenario that the board was used to or comfortable with doing. So my question is, again, do we think that the language allows the committee to address the need at hand in the practice that we would like to see, which I would expect the board to have some say.
My understanding is that this provision was amended just last year to create the currently existing provision that is there. So the fact that it doesn't match previous board practice, I think may just reflect the fact that the language is different, and that wasn't what the provision that was in place at the time of previous vacancy filling.
Okay, but with all due respect, Mike, I think we could all agree that you are tenacious about making sure the language of our bylaws matches our practice. And so I'm a little surprised to hear you not find an issue with practice not matching the language that is currently in place.
I am confused about what you're saying. I am saying that we should follow exactly what the language of our current provision is. The current provision that is in effect in our bylaw says that the nominating committee presents a candidate for the board's approval. And that I'm saying that we should follow what our provision says.
So this board is prepared for the nominating committee to bring 2 individuals in January, only 2, for us to vote on, with the potential of them not being approved and then to have a prolonged vacancy?
Well, I think the process is not for the nominating committee to find the people. I thought that was something that would be done, like getting resumes, advertising it, or going somehow getting people to apply, and then the nominating committee would present the applicants for, I mean, if there's more.
No, and that's what I'm discussing currently as written. It calls for the nominating committee to primarily do what you say, but then bring forward a candidate, an eligible person, or in this case, 2, only 2, for the board to approve. And that's the part I take issue with. That's not a process that I would like to see. I know that hasn't been the practice, but we've not yet updated the bylaws to reflect the practice. But we can't change the bylaws to reflect the practice because we don't have enough board members to change the bylaws.
Well,
I think
that we don't have enough board members to change the bylaws to reflect that only 9 trustees. But I don't know if there would be enough board members to change the process by which candidates are brought forward to for the board to consider. Because I think I don't think that the practice would be that for the nominating committee to make the decision, say that there were 5 people that applied, and the nominating committee would make a decision between 5 people. I mean, that's my assumption. Phil?
That's not what the bylaws currently say.
So the bylaws currently say, in the event of an incomplete term, the candidate who received the highest number of votes at the last election of trustees but was not elected shall be offered the vacant trustee position, and if accepted, shall serve until next library board election. If this candidate cannot serve, the nominating committee shall solicit interest from eligible persons and select a candidate who will be presented for approval by the board. At any election where more than 1 trustee vacancy is being filled and where 1 or more persons are to be elected for a full term or terms, and 1 or more persons to be elected for, this goes into how people fill in. So if all we have in here is that the nominating committee solicits interest, selects candidates, and presents them to the board, I think we're getting way too bogged down right now. We literally have changes to that section that we're hopefully voting on next month. All we have to do in this month is have the nominating committee bring people to the board. And as far as how many, as somebody pointed out, we have actually gotten 2 resumes from interested people. If we just go with those 2 resumes and bring them in, if everybody's had a chance to look at them and everyone's still interested, it should be that simple.
I completely disagree. Though, right? Adequately or sufficiently advertised or solicited a variety of eligible persons.
Is there anything in our bylaws that explains exactly how we're supposed to do that? Or does it just say that the nominating committee selects 2 people and brings them to the board?
The nominating committee hasn't met.
That's not what I asked, though. If the bylaws say the nominating committee solicits interest, doesn't say they even meet, just says they solicit interest from eligible persons and select a candidate who will be presented for approval to the board.
So somebody outside that nominating committee couldn't solicit somebody else, only the people in that committee.
If
Negative.
we're looking at the letter of
Absolutely.
the language, then I think we're getting bogged down here. I
Yeah,
think if somebody has someone else that they think is interested in the position, feel free to send it to the nominating committee so that we can bring people to the next election or to the next board meeting to hopefully approve them so we can have a full functioning board for the 5-6 months that those people are going to be able to serve and help us.
Phil, since I sat on the nominating committee for approximately 8 years of my time on the library board, the way it works is we solicit to the general public. The general public, if they're interested, submits a resume. The resume then comes to the nominating committee. The nominating committee, which usually consists of 3 people, sit down. They ask questions. This is not the first time we've done this.
And this hasn't happened yet, though.
Hold on. And then they ask questions. After the committees ask questions, and they've determined that they have a group of people who they think might be the right ones, they recommend it to the board. It goes to the board. At that point in time, the whole board is involved in the decision to say yes or no. If we don't go ahead and fill that spot, it goes to the general public again, and we figure it out. So here we're sitting here for 15 minutes having a discussion, not because the bylaws aren't correct, but because one person doesn't specifically like the way they're written. So hopefully we can move on with a vote here. Thank you.
And this is why we need to drop to 9, because the whole thing takes way too long.
I would just like to lastly respond that I think it is very interesting and telling that we need to have lengthy discussions that people are willing to entertain about specifics around bylaws for some issues and not others. And I think that that is completely just unsavory. I'd also like to know when we're going to solicit to the general public, in what way, and the time frame by which we have to all supply potential candidates. None of that has been explained or made explicit.
Barbara?
Kathy, could I just explain what we've done in the past? And it has always worked. We have the sign, we have advertised on the sign for a trustee position. I know the December newsletter has already gone out, unfortunately, but we've put it in the newsletter that there's a trustee vacancy. And it's been a very simple collegial process, and we've always filled the slot. So as I said, I think we can do the same thing again this time. Our time frame is shortened because you know, we're making these kinds of decisions. But if we put it on the sign, we give it to say until January 1st, respecting, you know, a lot of people are going to be busy, but if they see the sign and they're interested, they can send a resume. Any of us can solicit friends, neighbors, whatever, see if there's an interest there. And, you know, I'm sure we'll get 2 citizens that are willing to serve. As I said, it's only for 5 or 6 months. They may like it. We've had some people that have come on that have chosen not to run because it wasn't what they were, you know, looking for or hoping to do. So I just would assure Vanessa that it would be advertised publicly on our sign, posted in the library, I'm sure, and we have, you know, a number of screens in the library itself, so many library users would see it there. And anybody is welcome to, you know, pass on the information, as I said, to friends or neighbors and say, you know, we'd love to have you apply. So I don't think it has to be contentious. I think we just fill the slots and people will serve the 6 months, hopefully, and they choose or choose not to run for reelection.
All right, just make sure it's on the website too.
Right.
That people check the website. And I think January 1st might be a little soon just because we're coming up, you know, into holiday season, and I'm not sure that people are focused on that. So you might want to give it a little bit of extra time. But
I was just thinking, Kathy, just thinking to give the nominating committee time then once maybe the end of that week, so that they'd have like a week before our board meeting to you know, share the information from the candidates. And if enough of the board felt that they had enough information, in the past, we've always invited the people, you know, to come to the full board personally and answer any questions that we may have. So, you know, depending upon the time frame here, but you're right, you want to have enough time for people to apply if they're interested.
okay, so we've had a long discussion about this, and I think the nominating committee should probably meet and talk about this some more. And we should probably move on so we don't have 3-hour meetings, which hopefully won't continue to have. So Vanessa, the COVID committee and the pandemic operations plan.
Yes, so the COVID, committee met twice, preparing revisions that are contained in the proposed pandemic operations plan that was circulated in the board packet. A couple of things that I want to say about this process, this document, and some highlights to the changes. So I think it's important to state that this is not a policy, it's a plan. It was developed in response to state requirements at the onset of the pandemic. I believe the intention was to create a frame by which the director can operate and manage library services during the pandemic, and was never intended to be an attempt by the board to push into that management space. So that being said, some highlights to note as far as changes goes. Pretty much throughout the document, outdated COVID practices were removed. There were some assumptions and understandings early on in the pandemic that guided practice that no longer are held by public health. So those were taken out. In general, we try to reframe the document so that it includes language that confirms the library practices will be consistent with CDC and local health department guidance. Knowing that that's a forever changing field, we wanted to try to make this a little bit more evergreen to the extent that was possible to prevent the committee having to reconvene and adjust this plan every time there was new learning. You'll see in places the development of language that highlights and defers to the library director for needed changes. We hope that this is a responsive document and nimble and serves to provide library services to the town of Guilderland in a safe manner. I'd like to thank the library staff, committee members who put a lot of work into updated the continuation of services plan that is included in this pandemic operations plan. I think it is safe and responds to the needs and interests and desires of the community by gradually returning services to normal levels as objective conditions change. There's also in here a provision for the library director to move between those phases based on the local transmission rates after they have shifted to a new level and stabilized for 7 consecutive days. So if anyone else on the committee has any other highlights that I forgot to add, that concludes sort of what I would like to say about the work.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So there was a version of the chart, the continuation of service plan that was circulated and discussed at the COVID policy committee, and it had a number of changes on it, including related to computer use and courtesy seating and the study rooms and the play area. And we discussed those various changes that were in that circulated version, and none of those are reflected in the version that was in the board packet.
Yeah.
I think that that's an error. And I had not noticed that. I apologize for that. But there were, let me see if I can pull it up.
Because the version in the board packet does have some changes that we did discuss at the meeting that appear to be made.
I think it's just the chart.
No, I'm saying there's changes to the chart that were things we discussed at that meeting. And so I think there's 2 different versions that need to be merged or reconciled together.
Right. I was just saying, I believe the plan, the narrative of the plan is okay. I'm agreeing with you. I think that this is not the correct chart. Because as you said, there were study rooms that were in permitted services in the substantial level and moderate levels. So I'm not sure, I apologize for missing that in my review. I've looked at it so many times that it has become sort of invisible to me. So I'm not sure how to proceed. Barb?
This is just a general question. I happened to stop at the Colony Library today, and this is like 10 miles away from us, and it was in full operation. The people were at computers. No, I know our computers haven't come in yet, but people were at computers. Their meeting room was obviously being used. There were all kinds of glue guns, and there was a beautiful art display in their meeting rooms. And yet we still are saying, maybe this chart is incorrect, that we're not going to allow our meeting rooms to be used at all, that in the study rooms, you will move up to being used at least at the substantial level. But
yeah, there are a variety of changes, Barb, and I'm so sorry. Again, it's really hard to address your question because the intent was to include, and we even discussed that some things could be done at the discretion of the library director based on local conditions. That was the intent. I don't know how we vote on one that has the incorrect chart in it. Again, all I can say is that I'm sorry that I missed that.
Well, that's no problem. But as I said, I just don't see how we can justify to our neighbors that they can go, down the street to all these other libraries and they're functioning normally. And yet we're being quite restrictive, even, if we move those couple of things up in the chart. So I guess I'm with you that maybe we should wait and, clean up.
So let me be clear. I don't actually want to reopen it to relitigate it. You have attended a number of COVID committee meetings. I think, again, this is the plan that was developed for Guilderland Public Library. We're not Colony. And I can't speak to sort of the thought processes that went into their decisions about their continuation of services plan. But I know that this committee and staff were extremely thoughtful. I know that we continue to see changes locally that are concerning. So I think that it's only just one. So as someone's pointing out in here, and so I don't want to make generalizations or make you think that I want to go back and change this significantly. But I thought that there were some really reasonable changes that included study room and indoor programming and things of that nature that do get back to some of the things you're talking about.
Vanessa, do you want to, did you want a motion to approve this pending the correction of the chart, or did you want to?
Sure, but I at least wanted to be able to sort of say, so if you give me a second, or if anyone else on the committee can readily get their hands on the correct table. Tim, I don't know if you have access to the one that we.
I would have to say that I don't at this point.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm at home. So
Vanessa, we had also talked about the indoor seating, and now that we
indoor seating was on there, coming back in phases.
Barbara, we don't really want to relitigate everything about Colony and, issues about that. I mean, we had some
all these other
meetings,
libraries.
So I mean, really, it just takes a lot of time
End quote.
and we're just,
Tim, you're unmuted.
It's been the same complaint all the time. So I think we really need to just focus on the plan that has been specific to Guilderland, and I'm not sure what you want to do, Vanessa. Do you want to approve the plan pending the correction in the chart?
Sure. Tim is waving his hand. He might have a suggestion.
I've just had a staff member who's a member of the COVID committee offer to email me the correct chart. So if you'd like, I can forward that on to the board. And one approach that I could see would be to set this aside till you've all gotten that from the email and pick it up later in the agenda.
Okay,
One
so
one
should
thing
we,
is-
should we move on to, old business meanwhile?
I just want to note that there were some additional minor changes that were made to the chart after that meeting as a result of discussions of the meeting. So the version that was circulated prior to the COVID committee meeting is I think is mostly the the final intended version, but there were some additional changes that are reflected in the version that's in the packet. So somebody needs to kind of reconcile those and pull them together. The version that was circulated to the committee doesn't have all of the changes that the committee made.
So then we can vote on this in January.
Okay. We'll figure it all out and, all right, so should we move on to old business then?
Mhm.
Fine free, Tim?
How about Upper Hudson
Oh,
report?
I'm
if-
sorry, I forgot. I completely forgot you, Tony. Upper Hudson.
Yeah, this will be quick. There was no meeting.
Okay. Okay, old business, fine free, Tim? Tim?
A little louder, Tim.
Sorry, I just had a momentary interruption. Am I up?
Yep, I was just, we're at fine free.
Okay, so we are joined by, I'm so sorry, Natalie Hurto from UHLS, who is here just in case anybody wants to ask any questions about the extensive report that we prepared for you, which does include, of course, my summary of the reasons why I recommend that we take a vote and go fine free. At one bullet point that I forgot to add is that most of the major library systems in the, well, maybe not most, but an awful lot of the major library systems in the country have gone fine free. And a lot of the smaller libraries around us have gone fine free. It's going to happen eventually, I believe, from coast to coast. And I think this is a good opportunity to pursue it. But myself and Natalie would be happy to answer any questions that you have. And thank you, Natalie, for joining us again.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So I read through the materials and it looked like a similar percentage of materials was being returned on time or within 3 days of being due without fines as with fines. Is that accurate?
That's correct. I'm going to generally defer to you, Natalie, if you don't mind, but that because I don't have the report right in front of me, I ended up working from home today without knowing that I would be. But that is my recollection based on the report.
Yeah, that one chart, the histogram shows that the average of service delay is still up to 3 days.
In
And,
both situations, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Mhm.
And I know that somewhere in there it said that that some people whose card was suspended collectively owe about $43,000 in fines. What happens to that when you go fine free? Do you forgive the fines or do you try to collect them? I wasn't really clear from your chart what happens to the people who were suspended from having too many fines.
Basically, that would be up to you, but the standard practice is to simply forgive them all. Some of the libraries that have dealt with that have, let me use Albany, I believe, as an example. And Natalie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Albany's report, when they were at a similar juncture that we're at right now, indicated that I can't remember if it was 1 million or more than $1 million in fines that they were never going to collect unless they chose to use collection agencies. There's just not staff time to pursue $1 million worth of $8 fines, and it's not a logical thing to do either. So they just forgave them all, and that's typically what happens in large libraries and small. You forgive them all, and typically people breathe a sigh of relief when they get an email saying, you know, your fines have been waived, and they, in many cases, find the material and bring it back, and then more importantly, bring themselves back to the library, which is my goal in the overall thing. You know, it's I want to be careful to be respectful, but there's kind of a much ado about nothing. I mean, $30,000 over 365 days is, it's a lot of effort each day to collect what I think, if I'm good at math, would be about $100 a day. And it keeps 10% of the people in your community out of the library because they don't
Now,
want to come back.
if people do not return their books, like within a certain amount of time, are they charged for the material?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it seems to me you can't like not replace your books if they never come back. So
Correct. So, you know, getting an email or a U.S. mail notification that you owe $3 or something tends to get ignored. But getting a bill that says invoice at the top of it for $29.95 tends to either the book comes back or you get your $29.95. So, Natalie, please correct me if you have more experience than I do with this, but.
Yep, that's correct. So when it gets past due, the build notice, that's when those notices are generated. And as Tim said, they either go through email or phone, or through the US mail, but it's only when they are completely past due. So if it's just a couple of days, and again, you can set that as the policy committee, like how soon you want the past due notice to come out, the build notice, I should say, come out.
Typically about a month, right, Natalie, in other libraries?
Yeah, I believe APL and Castleton have sped up the date of when the build notice will be generated. But again, you know, that's the library's decision. If that's what you would like to do, you can absolutely do that.
any other questions or comments about fine free?
They get a notification that, hey, by the way, if you don't return this in the next 2 weeks, you'll be charged for the full amount.
There's a couple of notices that go out. So when you're past due, you get the past due notice, like saying, hey, you know, this book is late, please return it because you can't check out anything else. And then you'll get a couple of notices until it goes into build status, and that's when you get the invoice.
Just saying if there would be something to let the patrons know that they will be charged for the full amount of the book after 30 days so that they're not shocked about receiving this bill. And that's obviously without funds, just owing the bill amount.
Can I clarify? If somebody gets a bill that says they owe the full amount of the book, they can still just return the book at that point, and they don't have to pay it, right? So it's
absolutely.
Still,
Yep.
Okay, just to clarify. Okay.
Yep. And Narina, I believe, to clarify your question, yes, there's either 1 or 2 emails before a bill would come.
And I do believe there's language in one of them that says that you will be charged for this amount if it is not returned.
Okay, great, thanks.
So the long and the short of it is, they'll get a notice that says your book is late, please bring it back. There are no fines. Then they get a notice that says you haven't brought your book back. You can no longer take things out of the library until you either bring the book back or pay the cost of replacing the book. And that's the end of the story.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And the the length of time is up to the board or the policy committee. I mean, how do we decide what the length of time would be that would pass before someone would be actually sent in a bill for the book?
So within the library's own policies, you have your own loan rules, and each library has usually 2 renewals for that. So you can at the system level tell us like you would like your build notices to go out sooner if you don't want like multiple past due notices.
Typically, though, Kathy, in our library, that decision's made not even at my level, but Phil Berardi, the head of CERC, he will ask me questions about it at times. And what I tend to try to do is do what all the other large libraries are doing so that there's some uniformity throughout the system. Respectfully, I don't believe that's generally a board decision. And I know Natalie wouldn't know this at this point in time, but I don't think we have a policy of loan rules. I think we've always handled that internally.
Okay. So, what do you want? Do you want the board to make a decision about whether the library should be fine free or not?
Well, I would love that, but it looks like Mike has a question.
I just had a comment, and I want to say up front, I like this proposal. I do intend to vote for it. I do have one concern. It's related to a concern that I expressed when we talked about this previously. And as I look at the statistics, I know people have said that it's not a big difference, but as I look at it, it looks like a non-trivial difference in the late returns. If we look at the Bethlehem and the Guilderland numbers, both of them went from about 90% on-time returns down to 80% on-time returns, and that 10% seems like a decently large number. And Bethlehem, the 3 days late number basically doubled between the fine and the no fine situation. And my biggest concern, and I mentioned this before, is certain high demand books, new releases, summer reading list books, things like that, where already you sometimes have wait times because so many people are trying to get the same book. And also some of those items are short-term, only 14-day loans or things like that, where people might be more likely to hold them longer because they haven't finished it or need more time to read it. So I just would like going forward to know if we can kind of somehow keep an eye on that, on wait times. How many people, are we seeing an increase in hold requests, or time people have to wait before they get a hold request filled, especially for those higher demand items, just so we can understand the full impact of this policy. But that said, I do support it, and I think overall the benefits outweigh the drawbacks as I understand them today.
We can certainly keep an eye on that, and we can certainly change, anything theoretically. Natalie, any comment on that?
And I would just like to say, like the vote today to go fine free, it doesn't mean you're fine free tomorrow. This is just the decision. Like, yes, we want to do this. Let's put the policy committee on this and figure out what kind of fine free we want to do. So if you are concerned about your bestsellers and your DVDs, you can do this collection by collection and kind of just monitor, like, okay, let's just do the adult fiction that's like on the shelves, that's not going out, that has the 28-day loan period. Let's see how that goes, and then if you feel comfortable with that, expand it to other things. That'll be for you to kind of discover within your policy committee. So I just want to stress that if you're voting tonight, it's just the idea to, yes, we would like to go fine free, and then you decide within your policy committee what that looks like and what's right for you.
Can
I
I
would
just
add, go ahead, Narina.
Oh, what I would suggest is that I would be also on board with going fine free, and I think the library staff would be in the best position to tell us what books are, in high demand, or what they think that the items are that are in the most high demand. So I think they would need to make that decision as to, okay, we'll go fine free except for X and Y, which are, new releases, etc. So that's just my comment.
Bill, it looks like you're.
So I think I don't think it's about necessarily having fees on some of the items. I think it's more along the lines of at the library level, they could work with Upper Hudson to say books in these categories should have a shorter period of time before we send out a notification and a bill or something along those lines to speed up the process of getting the work back in. So for slow moving categories of books, it could be 30 days after we send you this notice. And for something that's in high demand, it could be it's 2 weeks overdue and you're getting the notice that says you have to pay for it. Is correct?
Correct. Yep.
And I think Mike's point or concern is very well taken and would be worth exploring. I also do happen to agree with Norina. I've spent 8 years working for a board, and I'm still trying to find out where the line is between fiduciary and operational, and it does move around. And I haven't cracked the code of that. But I think in general, the details should probably be left to us, to the people who work across the counters with the people wanting the books and the other items.
If I can just one more, I actually, I would be in favor, when it gets to the point, if we're going to make a motion and do this, I would be in favor tonight of voting to go fine free across the board and not needing this to get kicked to the policy committee to make other decisions. I don't particularly like the idea of a piecemeal fines for some items, not for other items. I think that's more confusing to the general public. And I agree with what Phil said, that if there is a concern, which I would like us to monitor how this is affecting, especially the high demand items, but I don't think that means we need to reinstate fines for those items necessarily. There may be other things we can do, like more aggressively, sending late notices or other things like that don't, or, being quicker on the gun to cut off people's ability to continue taking additional items out when they have something late that's a high demand item or whatever, other things like that. So I'd be content just to vote fine free across the board and be done with it and not have to kick this to the policy committee. Just my 2 cents.
And the my understanding is that the board can do that, and then the details would be up to the library staff as to how this is actually implemented. Is there a motion to support fine free? Vanessa, second. Phil. So I'll just do a roll call. Barbara. Phil.
Absolutely.
Vanessa.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Tony.
Yeah.
Norina.
Yes.
And Mike.
Yes.
Great, and I'm in favor as well. So unanimous that we will be in fine free, and motion passes unanimously 8:16 p.m.
Thank you. Can I go to the MOU question, or Kathy?
Right. Okay.
So we don't need to act on this tonight, but just a sentence or two about it. I had hoped that we would act on it tonight. So just reviewing, there's a 30-year-old memorandum of understanding between the school district and the library, and we've been trying to either update it or take it out of effect since the relationship is covered by law. We've got an agreement in principle on both the library side and the school district side to do that. But it, quite frankly, is a relatively low priority, especially to the school district, which has other fish to fry. So it's very hard to get the two lawyers to agree on the exact final action that we will eventually take. Before every board meeting, I ask our lawyer to check in with their lawyer, and they talk to each other in good faith, and then there's usually a hotter potato that they're dealing with. So we have nothing to talk about related to that tonight, unless anyone has any questions.
Okay. So then we go to committee assignments, and I just had one requested change. Yeah. Got to get to the very, very end of this to get to my committee assignments. 1 second. There was one requested change, I think, with the personnel committee. Since I am ex officio in the in all committees now as president, Barbara had requested to move to the personnel, the standing personnel committee in lieu of me, who am now ex officio in all committees. So that was one change. Were there any other requests to change to a different committee, or change anything else on the committee list?
So I just had one comment, and I hate to bring this up, but on the audit committee, we have this to add Phil to the committee, and technically our bylaws say that the audit committee is only made up of 3 members. It's supposed to be 2 non-trustees and 1 trustee. So I know we had another trustee on there before when we did it previously, and I don't know why that was done, but according to our bylaws, it's only supposed to be a 3-person committee with 1 trustee. So
I will graciously step down.
And I'd like to say that I absolutely, completely would welcome Phil's participation in the committee, and due to the nature of the committee, I really think it makes very little difference whether someone is officially a member of the committee or just a trustee joining, because the only duty of the committee is just to review and then present to the board. So I think I'd welcome Phil or anyone else to join us, but just according to our bylaws, it's only supposed to be a 3-person committee, and that affects things like the quorum and things like that. So I think we need to follow the bylaws.
Okay, so with that change, Phil being a honorary member now, not as opposed to an actual member. And then the change to the personnel committee, adding Barbara instead of myself, as I am ex officio. With those 2 changes, is there a motion to accept the committee committee assignments? Phil?
And I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And anyone opposed? Is anyone opposed? Okay, passes unanimously at 8:20 p.m. Let's see, and then we had, I'll get back to my agenda. What was next on the agenda?
Vacation carryover.
Okay. Did you want to speak to that, Tim?
Yes, please. First of all, it says requests, but it's now only 1 request. The members of CSEA Unit 1 did such a good job spending down their vacation time over the last couple of months that it became a non-issue that we could resolve on behalf of 4 people who needed to carry over a little bit of time, and I have the authority in the contract to do that. So those 4 people will carry over and use their vacation by the end of the first quarter, so March 31st. The other request is from me. My contract limits me to carrying over 25 vacation days. I earn 20 a year, and this year I was able to use 8. With construction and COVID, it continues to be difficult to take much time off. And now with 2 of the 3 administrators of the library retired, I'm not taking any days off. So I would like to request to, there's a document in the board packet that Chris Lanchanton had drawn up last year, where I made the same request and it was approved. And Jenna has changed the dates in it to reflect the same request for this year. So I'd like to be able to keep those vacation days rather than losing them. So we would need a motion to pass that.
So I don't see the motion in the, I'm having trouble finding that.
I could read it to you if you
Could you
want
read it? Thank you.
Sure, although I think Barbara's got a question.
Okay,
I was
Barbara.
just gonna make the motion, to extend the time.
I can read the motion though, if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay. Whereas GPL employs Tim Wiles as its director, whereas the agreement provides paid vacation days to Mr. Wiles, and further provides that up to 25 vacation days may be carried over for use in future years, and whereas due to the disruption caused by the COVID-19 crisis, Mr. Wiles will be unable to use all of his 2021 vacation days. He has requested that, and the library has agreed that it would be fair to allow Mr. Wiles to carry. Okay, so what we're looking at here is an agreement. So I think the motion would need to be for Kathy as board president and me to execute the agreement that's in the board packet. And it just basically says such carryover days shall be added to Mr. Wiles' 2022 vacation leave. Yeah.
What's it called? Resolution. Yeah, the resolution is actually after the signature part.
Okay. I don't
So if
have
you-
that
if-
right here.
you
So
Is Tim
Oh.
considered CSEA Unit 1?
no.
No.
Then that's the wrong resolution that Chris Lanchan sent then.
So
Are we just voting to authorize entering into this agreement with Tim?
yeah.
We have this full agreement here, so I think that's all we need to do, right? Just authorize entering into this agreement.
Works for me.
Yeah.
I'll move that.
Okay. So we have a motion
Yeah.
that was,
I'll second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, passes unanimously at 8:25.
Thank you.
All right, and then we have the charter change process, which I'm not sure we need to discuss because that was related to the 9-person board.
Oh, no, the charter change is to change the length of term. And that's a separate process, whether we went the 9-member board or not, to get that ball rolling, because it's a 6 to 12 month process just to go through that with the state.
Okay, I thought that was only necessary if we were going to a 9-member board. Am I incorrect about that?
I think there's still some appetite for changing the length of a board term, because 5 years is pretty long, and some people feel that it's possibly too long. And as we've shown in the last few years, we've had trouble retaining people for that full term.
Mm-hmm. Kathy, Tim was going to look into telling us what the process would be. I think the voters have to vote on it at the next election. And so I believe we have to pass a resolution suggesting this. And Tim, you fill in the rest of the story.
Okay, so as I understand it, we have to make a formal request to the state ed department that we want to change the charter to reflect shorter board terms. And I do note that you could do 3 years, or you could do 4, or any other number you wanted. But my understanding is that you simply pay $60 to get it on the agenda of the Board of Regents, which meets 2 to 4 times per year. And that from Tim Burke, that it is not ever controversial to change the length of board terms in Board of Regents meetings. It's kind of a rubber stamp. I did not see anything about putting it in front of the voters in the email that Tim Burke sent us, but I can double check that as well. I don't think you can do anything tonight regardless. Like, I don't think you can vote. Well, maybe you do have to vote to proceed with that process. I don't know. never have done it before.
Yeah.
Try.
It sounds
try
like,
Mhm.
sorry, it sounds like if we decide to do this as a board, then we go through Tim Burke to get the process rolling and he'll manage it for us with
In
the
fact,
$60 fee.
He says in there, respectfully towards you guys, he says, we want to manage this for you. Just because it's, I guess, relationships with the Board of Regents, at least from the library perspective, you want to make sure you do everything right. You school board folks might see them more often than we do, but it's not very often that we're in touch with the Board of Regents.
Yeah,
So do we want to discuss this?
Okay, we can discuss it. I'm not sure, I mean, I don't know if running for election more often really accomplishes anything. I mean, it seems like the resignations that we've had have been sort of like for a variety of reasons, and some have been sort of spontaneous. I'm not really sure that that whether it's a 3-year term or a 5-year term would have made a whole lot of difference. But that I mean, maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I'm not really sold on it. But I'll listen to people's opinion. Anybody have anything to add?
The school board runs for 3 years as well, right?
Yeah, but it's a 9-member board.
Yeah, I mean, the number of members on it doesn't really matter. It's the term that we're kind of discussing here, and they can both be changed separately. But I mean, I don't know that we really need 11 members to run one single library facility either, but that's, again, that separate conversation. I just think that 3 years is reasonable, and 5 years for somebody who maybe decides this isn't exactly for them is a long time to have to wait it out and not feel like you're excited or enthusiastic about participating in the process.
So after 3 years, the last 2 years are unexciting.
I wouldn't know. I served in tiny
I'm
little
being a little
chunks
bit
multiple
flippant, but,
times.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll listen to the opposite viewpoint. I mean, anybody else have anything to add to this? Barbara?
Kath, the one thing that I've heard over the years, and a person that you know quite well, Dan Senti, was really vociferous about the fact that he felt it was very intimidating for people to make a 5-year commitment versus a 3-year commitment. And we've heard that over the years from a number of people. So I would certainly be in favor of proceeding with this.
Anybody else?
I would just quickly say the last 2 years have been grueling, and I would be completely in support of a 3-year period for a term. Not that I haven't loved serving on the library board, but it is a long, long commitment. I'm dedicated to fulfilling my term and doing that, but it does become long. I mean, with committee meetings and all the other things that are involved with it, it's a long commitment to make for anybody. So I'd be completely supportive of doing a 3-year term.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Mike?
I also agree, and I think there's both the issue of potentially having more interest at the outset for people running for the position if it's not as long of a commitment. Also, and while I can't speak to any of the specific people who have resigned over the last couple of years, I think it's very possible that the difference between someone thinking, can I stick this out for another year till my term is up versus can I stick this out for another 3 years till my term is up is a very different consideration and might have made a difference. I don't know if it would or not. But another consideration is just also, I think it may make, to some degree, help to make sure that this board is staying more responsive to the electorate of that we serve. If a slightly larger portion of the board is coming up for election every year rather than being spread out so thinly from year to year.
Anybody else?
I think the comment that I wanted to make is if we change the term now, if we ever do revisit the issue of reducing the number of board members, and that might be an easier decision at that time if the terms are shorter, as I understood the problem being in the earlier discussion.
Mhm.
I have one question. This might be a question that Tim Burke can answer, but if we made this change and switch from 5 years to 3 years, I have no idea what happens to existing terms that are ongoing. Are people grandfathered into what they were elected into at the start, or do terms get truncated down when the change is made in the charter? I really don't know how that works, and maybe Tim Burke could answer that, but.
Mike, I might be able to answer that. I spoke with Chris Lanchanson today with just that question, and she said that the people's current terms would remain, but over the course of the years, once your charter is in place, whoever's elected that year would be the 3-year term, and then as the next group comes on, she says you don't ever take away from the electorate, a place that a body has been put, so to speak. And so she said it would be done sort of, over the course of a couple of years.
That makes sense to me.
So my sense is a majority wants to do this. I'm not really sure. I don't think I've heard from everyone, but I'm not sure like how this works. Does the board have to vote to start the process? I mean, when does this all happen?
So can I make a suggestion? It seems to me that nothing is really, final until we've submitted the paperwork to the, to state ed for approval. So maybe if there does seem to be majority support, maybe we can just take kind of a straw poll. We could at least get the process rolling with Tim Burke and get the paperwork going, and maybe take an official binding vote when it's time to actually file the paper, when we kind of know what it looks like and are ready to go. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Okay, well,
Makes a lot of sense.
we'll see what people think about if you're in favor of going to a 3-year term. Barbara,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Vanessa,
Conceptually, yes. It feels weird to say yes sitting on a 5-year term, but sure, for everybody else up for election, make them 3 terms.
Peter,
Yes.
Tony.
I'm gonna say no.
Did you say no?
No, correct.
Okay. Norina,
Yes, I would be in favor of making the term 3 years.
and Mike.
Yes.
Well, it looks like I'm not really in favor of doing it, but I think there is a majority in favor. So
Yeah,
sounds
can I come
like,
to a 5-year?
what's that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor.
6 in favor. So that's a majority. So I guess we'll start the paperwork to do it.
Can I ask a quick question?
Mhm.
So we're just gonna start this. It's not bolded. Was this the official vote? I'm unclear. Because
It was a
if
straw poll.
we're now bringing on new members, would it be reasonable to let them chime in, or we want to make the decision before we bring new members on? I don't know.
The new members are going to be here for 5 months regardless and have to go up for election afterwards anyway. They're in here just to help us function as a board, just like me.
But still, I mean, once they're a board member, they're a board member, and we're not excluding them from other votes.
Correct.
Well, this process would not take
I
place
guess
for.
to simplify the question, was this the final vote, or I'm unclear of if that was the straw man vote, if that was the real vote?
It was just a straw poll to see if there was a majority support for going through this process.
I would like to make a motion for Kathy to engage with Tim Burke to get the process started to amend our charter so that we can be a 3-year term instead of a 5-year term.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'll take roll call. Barbara,
Yes.
Sorry, who seconded it?
Peter,
Phil,
Okay.
Phil,
Yes.
Vanessa,
Yes.
Peter,
yes.
Tony,
No.
Norina,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
And I am not in favor. So so I guess well, we got a majority.
Sorry, did Barbara
It passed.
vote? I didn't hear her vote. Was her vote yes?
Barbara, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So at 8:38, the motion passes to begin the process to reduce terms to 3 years. Okay, I think, oh, we still have, we have to discuss the district clerk role. And now this, as I've been secretary, previously, I think Jenna had, been doing the minutes, and it, it came to her attention that the secretary was supposed to be doing the minutes. And the question was, would Jenna be take on an additional role of being the district clerk? Maybe you can explain that better than I could, Tim.
Sure. So in the Jenna has engaged herself in a comprehensive review of the library trustee handbook, and has found a lot of kinds of things that we don't do according to the handbook, which, as I understand it, is not a binding document, but a compilation of best practices. But in the handbook, it does say that the secretary is responsible for preparing the minutes of each board meeting, a process that is taking Jenna in this virtual era 5 to 10 hours per month, and that the secretary is also responsible for overseeing the annual meeting in July and overseeing the budget vote. And it says in the handbook, I'll just read this because it's better than explaining it. Many libraries, either by choice or legislation, appoint a library district clerk. The primary duty of the district clerk is to oversee the annual trustee and budget vote. Many district clerks also perform secretarial duties at board meetings, taking minutes which they submit to the board secretary for review and submission to the board. This position is often filled by a library employee, but is considered a separate appointment answerable to the board with a stipend in addition to any other duties. As an officer of the corporation, the district clerk must take an oath of office. And so we don't need a vote tonight, because if you as a board were to choose to implement this, we would need Chris Lanchanton to come up with an agreement. But Jenna's position, I think I can fairly represent, and mine as well, is that we would like to have that 5 to 10 hours per month back that she's currently performing duties that might be more appropriately performed by a board member, because it is taking away from the function of our administrative office to spend that much time writing the minutes. And so I did some research with Rebecca Smith Aldrich, who's the co-author of the Library Trustee Handbook, to follow up on what I just read to you. And she said, typically, you know, she didn't know Jenna, but she said, typically it is someone in Jenna's role. It's a confidential board secretary, and typically they're paid at an hourly rate, either exactly equivalent or very close to what that person's hourly rate is for their regular duties. So what we would be doing is we'd if you went for this, we'd be basically hiring Jenna in a probably approximately 10 hours a month mode at her hourly rate of pay to perform those board duties, which again are minutes, overseeing the annual meeting, and overseeing the budget vote, which really just means coordinating the paperwork and making sure that all the candidates have all the proper forms turned in on time, et cetera. And so it's something Jenna's interested in doing, and I'm interested in doing. We did speak with Margaret Garrett and briefly with Chris Lanchanton about it. And our motivation is really that we're trying to get Jenna's full 35 hours a week back to helping to run the library front office. Our questions with Chris Lanchanton kind of basically involve coming up with that contract. Like it might be, and we're totally fine, by the way, if we were to, if you guys were to say, please pursue this effective, let's say July 1, which is the first day of the new fiscal year, while we could probably easily absorb this expense in our budget without going over, it might be slightly more appropriate, I guess, to do it as part of a budget year. We have done it the way we've done it ever since we've hired Jenna in that role and with her predecessor as well. So we certainly know how to do it, but we could use Jenna's time back on her regular duties.
Well, I'd be in favor of that. I mean, it's difficult, I think, for the secretary to participate in a board meeting and take detailed notes at the same time. I could just attest to that, because sometimes unless there's somebody at the meeting like Jenna who's taking notes and just taking notes, it's difficult to know if you're going to be accurate. And then going through the transcript, I mean, our meetings are pretty long, and going through the transcript takes a lot of time. So that's just my 2 cents worth as having been secretary. And I think that I'd be in favor of that. Barbara?
I totally agree with you. I know the school board, as you know, has a district clerk and receives a separate stipend. And for reasons that you just shared, it allows the board secretary to more fully engage in the discussions. So I would be totally supportive, of pursuing a contract or whatever is necessary for her to take on this role officially. She's been doing it unofficially, and does a great job at it.
Yes, she does. Bill?
So we can't take any action today. We're just waiting on, at the next board meeting, the language of that agreement coming from Chris, correct?
Is that correct, Tim?
That would be my understanding. We also have to kind of iron out whether the trustee handbook is slightly unclear about whether there's any relationship between this kind of a position and civil service. So we have to square that away. But I personally would kind of suggest if there's no opposition, I'll be happy to ask Chris to draw up the agreement and get it into the board packet for January, and go from there. So.
I guess one decision we could make as a board is, do we want to try and make this effective for the next fiscal year, or do we think we want to absorb this and start this with January or February's meeting?
How does that work, Tim?
I think that's totally up to you guys. Margaret and Carol and I met on this virtually, of course, and the kind of the impact to the budget. If you take 10 hours a month, you're really talking about 2.5 hours a week. And there's enough flexibility in the budget that it is not going to cause that line to go red for the year.
I would be in favor of introducing it as soon as we were able to. I mean, it's such a value to the board. Thanks, Jenna.
As the current secretary, I think I would definitely agree with that because I don't think I would have volunteered for the position had it not been for Jenna being so awesome. And she's really on top of stuff all the time, immediately, as soon as you ask her for things. So, yeah, I completely support that as soon as we can make that available to her.
Okay.
So that's 5 of you and nobody in opposition. Do I need 6 to pursue this with Chrisley and Shanton?
I agree. So I'll be 6 if we need it. So
Okay. So,
great.
Shall we go to our last matter?
Let's do it.
Okay. So when I was researching my vacation carryover request, I happened to notice that the final date on my contract is December 31st of this year. So I asked Chrisley and Shanton to draw up a resolution which basically says that we'll get to negotiating my new contract as soon as we can, and that once it's finalized, any additional pay or benefits would be retroactive to January 1st of 2022. And that resolution is in your packet, and I would be pleased to continue legally serving as your library director. So I urge you to take a vote on that.
I'll move it.
So can I just want to ask real quick, I'm just curious because this kind of snuck up on us. How was this supposed to happen in the normal course? Because I assume we weren't supposed to, realize this was happening when it was just about to expire.
Yep, that's a great question, Mike. The ultimate responsibility for that does fall on me. I need to know my own contract and know when it expires. But I would say that in juggling the balls with the retirements of Margaret and Carol, typically they would have brought it to my attention, but they have retired. So that's my excuse, if you will, for why I didn't notice it sooner. And I do regret that, but of course I can't change the timing now.
Kathy? Oops. Just for Mike's benefit, normally what happens much earlier in the year, the personnel committee will send out a questionnaire to all the board people. They would rate Tim's performance on X, Y, and Z. They would gather that material. They would have a meeting with Tim. They would come back and share with the board what Tim was asking for as enhancements or whatever, or changes in the contract. And then the full board would vote on it. Of course, with COVID and everything else that's happened over the course of this year, none of those steps happened. But now if we were to extend his contract, they can happen, over the course of the next few months. And, but that's normally what happened in years past.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That helps me understand how it's supposed to go.
So was there a motion to extend Tim's contract?
Yes.
Yes. Do we need to read that into the meeting or no?
No.
Then cool.
Okay.
I think it would be necessary to read it because it wasn't part of the board packet.
I will read it if somebody would like me to.
Okay.
I think it was in the board packet, at least.
No, it wasn't. That was related to
a
the
separate email.
vacation days.
Oh, that was something, okay.
So, whereas Executive Director Timothy Wiles and the Guilderland Public Library are parties to an employment agreement which expires on December 31st, 2021, and whereas the Executive Director and the Board of Trustees of the library intend to meet after the new year to negotiate a successor agreement, and whereas the parties wish to continue the current terms and conditions of Mr. Wiles' employment until such time as a successor agreement is reached, it is hereby resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Guilderland Public Library votes to extend the employment agreement of the Executive Director, Timothy Wiles, under the same terms and conditions until such time as a successor agreement is reached. Any successor agreement will be retroactive to January 1st, 2022.
Okay, and we had a motion and a second, or did we?
I think I was the motion right there.
I made the motion, then he was the second, and then Phil read it. So
Okay,
Okay.
doesn't matter, I guess.
let's make Jenna's job hard.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, seeing no opposition, I'll say it's unanimous at 8:53. And I think, is that it? Oh, we have public input. Is there any more public input? Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara.
This is just would be under new business, but it's just a statement that we can discuss at a later meeting. In going around town, there are holiday decorations all over town. Happy Hanukkah signs. I'm sure there'll be Merry Christmas signs. I've gone to other libraries where there are trees and Hanukkah displays and different cultures that celebrate certain holidays. And at some point, I'd like to discuss our library joining the real world and celebrating all cultures and religions and traditions, and letting the library community know that this is a very particularly festive season for a lot of people, and that perhaps we would consider doing something special, within the library community. I know in my sister's library, they have a display of about 20 different trees within the library. Each tree is sponsored by a family or an organization that has a book theme, and all the decorations on the tree, and it just attracts tons of people from the community to come into the library, and they often do it with a bake sale and things such as that. But I just wanted to throw that out there for future consideration, that maybe we could actually officially put it on for discussion at maybe in January's meeting.
Yeah, we could do the library and gingerbread.
Whatever.
I'm kidding. Okay, all right. Well,
Next year.
So
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
what was there any public comment? No public comment?
No public comment has come in. No.
Okay.
Can I just,
And then I'll entertain a motion to
can I just ask
adjourn.
a question? I'm sorry, can I just
That
ask
was-
a question before we leave? I want to clarify something before we log off, because Marcia's not here and I think she's the chair of the nominating committee. The decision is made then that we are going to meet to canvass people to submit their resumes and have something to you by the next meeting in January, correct?
Correct.
Also to use the library's website, our sign out front, and
Right.
maybe make a few postings in the library proper, so that
We'll
the
work-
community
we'll
is
work on
aware that we're
that.
looking for volunteers.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
All right, and I think Peter had moved to adjourn. Is there a second? Phil? All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Good night.